We welcome to our show John Morris Russell, who is in his 11th year as conductor of the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. And under his baton, Shaken Not Stirred, the music of James Bond, will take place on June 4th, 2024 with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra in Chicago. Welcome to our show, John Morris Russell.
Oh, thanks so much, guys. Dan, it's so nice to hear another fellow Midwesterner say, John, I love
it. There you go. That's good. All right, John, besides Tom and me, we have with us another guest, Raymond Benson, to ask a few questions. He was the first American to be authorized by the Ian Fleming Publications folks to write James Bond continuation novels, of which he has written 6, plus 3 novelizations. And he's got a musical and theater background as well. So he's going to ask you a couple of questions as well.
That's fantastic. Lay them on me, man. I mean, this is fantastic to be here with you all and to know that there are fellow James Bond geeks in our presence.
Yes.
These concerts are always so fun. I've done these concerts like all over the continent, and every time, they're like a half dozen guys, and they're dressed in tuxedos, and they've usually had about 3 martinis too many, and they are all having like such a hoot at these concerts. So it's great to see you all here on this live broadcast.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, John. All right, John, tell us about your life as a conductor, what you love to focus on, how you innovate, and how you became involved in Shaken Not Stirred.
Well, I'm a product of the public schools. When I was a kid, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and it was back in the day when there was music in all the public schools. And so I started out playing trumpet and played in high school or in elementary school, orchestra, junior high school, jazz band, marching band. I was a complete band geek. And it was in college I started having some problems with my chops playing trumpet. And so someone suggested, hey, why don't you try conducting? And so I went to study at University of Southern California and King's College London. And I found that in combining my passion for orchestral music as well as my passion for jazz, I kind of came into this world of pops music. And of course, the Cincinnati Pops is the most recorded pops orchestra on the planet. And we concentrate on the great American musical ethos, right? It's everything from jazz and R&B and soul and hip hop and Broadway. And of course, a whole lot of film music as well. And so this concert in particular just has all of these elements that I just adore about great orchestral music making.
It's fantastic. So tell our listeners what they should expect at this fabulous event coming up June 4th in Chicago. I know you've got Capathia Jenkins with you too, right?
That's right. Capathia Jenkins, an incredible singer.
Yes.
In fact, one of the very first times she ever sang with an orchestra, she was kind of a Broadway gal and was kind of making the shift into doing orchestral concerts. And so I got her to do my very first James Bond concert. And of course, she just knocked it out of the park. And we've done this concert with dozens of orchestras across the continent. But I mean, her career has just exploded, and she's doing all sorts of orchestral productions all over the place. And so it's always an absolute joy to work with her. So putting together a Bond program for orchestra, and it's really difficult, right? Because 25, 26, how many films, guys?
25.
There we go. Okay, there we go.
We're hoping to get to 26.
And that does not include, like the first Casino Royale with
Right.
David Niven.
Right.
We don't even count that, do we?
No,
We
or
do.
never say never
We
again.
do.
Yeah, but when we say
do.
25,
I mean, it
doesn't
had a
count.
great score. It had the Burt Bacharach score. It's
That's right,
fantastic.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
true, too.
fantastic.
So we talk about the 25 Broccoli productions,
Yeah.
and the thing is, there's just too much fantastic music to do on a single concert. And so the tricky part of it is like putting together, those quintessential great hits, things that kind of tell a little story of those very early films, like in the first decade, that big broad midsection, with everything from the Roger Moore, all the way through Pierce, and then this last chapter of films, which has been extraordinary with Daniel Craig and all of those folks, and who the heck knows what's going to happen in the next chapter, eh?
Yes, we're all wondering that.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so we put together all of these greatest hits that kind of represent the different styles of films, the different styles of composers, and the different styles of music. I mean, look at this from like 1962 until the present. I mean, that's a huge swath of American musical style.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I wanted to say something when I saw that Capathia was going to be in this, I was like, I mean, I first knew her as Meta Larkin in Newsies, and that's where
I
remember hearing her. And I'm like, and then I've followed her a little bit since then, and it's like that lady can sing her face off, and I think it's going to be great to hear her do this kind of music.
Well, the trick of this for her, really, and we talk about this all the time, is shifting gears. And she has to sing everything from Adele to Shirley Bassey, Gladys Knight, right? And to shift from one style to the next, and she just does it, I mean, seemingly effortlessly. And of course, the cool thing about this program especially is these are all the original arrangements. Nick Raine, who orchestrated so many of these films, has put together this collection of these original arrangements that is just like mind-blowing. I mean, because what you hear is what you heard in the film.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Wow.
I would buy all the soundtrack albums growing up, for every Bond film that came out and everything, and so much is not necessarily the vocal title song, which is, always iconic, but a lot of it is the sweeping instrumental pieces. And I was wondering, like the On Her Majesty's Secret Service main title theme or the 007 theme that's used in several films. Did you consider doing any instrumental underscore pieces in the concert?
Well, we do a couple of tributes to like the main theme, right? Monty Norman, I mean, he crafted that one iconic theme, right? That has been used in all of the films, right? It's got that little chromatic rising line, the little chromatic diminished line, or John Barry, who started to use these really like jazz harmonies, like major minor chords stacked on top of each other, and those big sweeping string lines. I think the thing that really defines these films is that unique mixture of sounds, right? I like to call it spy-fi. and if we were to say that there's one progenitor of the spy-fi sound, it's got to be Henry Mancini, right? Peter Gunn. And there you have this combination of like beach surf rock and roll, right? That tenor guitar, right? And that kind of that rock and roll rhythm behind it. And then you throw on top of that jazz, right? With those sophisticated harmonies that John Barry brings into the mix. And then you put on top of that a full orchestration. I mean, the strings, the French horns, the trombones, the trumpets, for Pete's sake, right? Lots of harp. And it just adds this richness and sophistication to the sound. And there's nothing else like it. All of those melange of sounds. And you first hear it with Henry Mancini, of course, with Peter Gunn, also with Pink Panther. You have people like Laurie Johnson in The Avengers, the TV show. Has that same type of ethos to it. Even composers like Lalo Schifrin for Mission Impossible, with those offbeat rhythms and that kind of jazzy sound. All of the composers who created these iconic film scores were all dabbling in kind of they were all playing with the same elements and, put their own special stamp on it. So the short answer is yes, we are going to be playing music from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, as well as the main theme of James Bond as well. But of course, you don't want to give short shrift to just all of these incredible hit tunes.
Maybe you've answered this question already, because I assume you're a big James Bond fan, but what is your favorite James Bond movie score?
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go like geek on geek here, because they always say your favorite Gilbert and Sullivan operetta is the first one you heard.
There you go.
Pirates of Penzance, done. And the fact is, I think it's the same with James Bond. It's like the first James Bond score you ever heard. That's the one you like the most. So I go for Goldfinger. Shirley
Okay.
Bassey. I mean, come on, incredible. You know,
It's
and
one.
Diamonds
It
Forever,
certainly is an iconic, groundbreaking score. It pushed the
right?
envelope.
Yeah,
It opened the eyes and ears of everybody around the world.
yeah.
Yes,
And
it
I
And
did.
think also
so that theme song in Goldfinger, is that your modern Major General?
and you know what else? Thunderball, Tom Jones. Oh
Okay.
my goodness,
Yeah.
what a theme and what a voice. And you know, so much of it is those iconic voices and the composers who created these theme songs to fit that voice. And you know, and each one, you know, kind of defined a generation.
All right, I want to ask a question of Raymond here. JMR was just talking about John Barry, and you told me a story about something that you did that would have scared the living daylights out of me. And so, can you
Right.
relate that story of you meeting John Barry?
Okay, so John, I'm a pianist, and I was invited to attend a tribute to John Barry at in England, and I was hired to play on the piano a 12-minute suite of my arrangement of his music for John Barry and
Oh my
500 other
goodness.
people, including the Bond producers and people from the current movie. And boy, I was nervous as hell. But I did it. And one of the most meaningful moments of my entire life was John Barry coming up on stage and giving me a hug
Wow.
afterwards. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
I know it was just mind-boggling. But I wanted to know: have you met any of the Bond composers like John Barry or George Martin or Marvin Hamlish or Bill Conti or Michael Kamen, Eric Serra,
Yeah.
David Arnold, Thomas Newman, or Hans Zimmer?
I've only met one of them, and that's Marvin, who was a longtime conductor of the Buffalo Philharmonic Pops,
Right.
and in fact, it was a real honor because when he after he passed away, I took over for his position with the Buffalo Philharmonic. So I've done a lot of his charts, and Capathia actually was very close with him as well, and would do concerts with him. And in fact, a lot of the time backstage, we're hanging out. You know, we're all just sharing great Marvin stories. So
Uh-huh. Well, his score is terrific, you know, and coincidentally, I just saw the movie, which was his first movie score, and that was called The Swimmer from 1968, starring Burt Lancaster. That was his
wow,
very
Oh,
first
I kind
movie
of
score.
remember that movie.
I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
I think I recognize
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
it's a gorgeous score too.
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, the guy could write a tune for Pete's sake, right? I mean, he had this
Oh
gift
yeah,
for melody that was just tremendous.
yeah. Well, that leads me to, you know, other film composers. You're obviously you admire film composing and scores. Can I ask what other composers you might admire, like maybe Ennio Morricone or Bernard Herrmann or Nino Rota,
Well,
Miklos Rocha?
you're going right down the list of all my faves. Morricone, you know, it's like it's again, it's one of those early scores, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I was just so riveted by that film, specifically because of the score, and then The Mission. Oh, Get Out of
Oh,
Town,
yeah,
right? I mean, just so meaningful and rich, and it was like the music was a whole nother character
yes,
in the film. I think all the great ones are kind of like that. Like Jerry Goldsmith, you
yep,
know what a craftsman, and you know, creating that sense of mood and style. Bernard Herrmann, of course, and all those Hitchcock classics. I tell you what, Eric Korngold
yes.
is I'm really crazy about him. We're doing. I just discovered this score to a film called King's Row,
Oh, yes.
and listen to the main theme of King's Row, and you'll say, "Oh, that's the main theme to Star Wars, isn't it?" Which takes me to my other favorite composer, which is John Williams. And you know, who was it? Was it Igor Stravinsky who said, you know, the good composers borrow and the great composers steal? And so, you know, I think John Williams, I mean, an exceptional composer, but boy, that guy knows how to steal.
Well,
my
this
God.
may be sacrilegious to say on a Bond podcast, but Ennio Morricone is my favorite film composer. He's just, I love him.
Yeah,
Absolutely
and
love him.
just a great sense of mood and
Yes.
texture. and that feeling that you have, right? And and that's exactly what happens in the Bond films. It's that feeling. You hear those big, rich added note chords with those big extended harmonies in a full orchestra, and you're looking at those sweeping landscapes from any location around the world, and it just fills you with this sense of wonder and possibility.
And I think that was a real John Barry signature. I think those sweeping strings over the lyrical, location scenes where Bond is traveling, and you hear the theme song done instrumentally in a beautiful, gorgeous, arranged string thing. That was just fantastic.
And same thing with Out of Africa, right? It's that same expansive sound. And I think, okay, who's keeping track on this stuff? I think that John Barry still holds the record for having composed more Bond scores than any other composer. I think David Arnold comes in number 2.
You're right. But David Arnold only did, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. Barry did 10 or 11 or 12.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, we're speaking about movies and music here. So how do you think the images in the movie drive the music, John? Or how the music can drive the images? How do they work together? And since the scores for movies they're generally different than just, say, like a classical piece.
Right. Okay, so of course, the movie comes first, right? And to me, this is what blows my mind about film composers, and I'll relate this to John Williams and Steven Spielberg. But I mean, it's the same with them all, right? That whenever a movie is being made, they make this thing a scratch track. They just put some odd music underneath it just to carry it along, and then finally the composer gets to see the film, and there's no music. And can you imagine, watching a 2-hour film, a 2.5-hour with nothing? Oh my goodness. And then to have to come up with the ideas. And so much of it is a visual stimulus that says, okay, let's get the creative wheels turning. And so it always happens that way. The film is made first, and then the composition comes later. Now, of course, with James Bond, you have these major themes, right? You've got the James Bond theme. You've got the on Her Majesty's Secret Service, which is another theme which finds itself into many of the films. You have a certain harmonic language and such, but still, there's so much room for creativity that goes on there. So you discover how important the music is in terms of character and kind of defining the feeling when you conduct one of these film scores live. And I've had the opportunity of doing this on several occasions. My very first one was E.T., right? I've done Star Wars, West Side Story, and when you practice for something like this, I'll have a videotape, and it'll just have the film, a little time code, so I can coordinate it with the music, and we hear all the dialogue, we hear all the sound effects, but you don't hear any music, and it is weird. You're just watching all of these images going by, and I'm kind of practicing, trying to hear the music in my head while conducting along with it. And when you finally put it together in a concert, you've got to coordinate every piece of music, like to the millisecond, along with those images for 2 hours, sometimes even longer, right? And it's the most difficult thing in the world to conduct when you're doing one of those productions live, right? Because you have to coordinate, an orchestra of 80, 90 musicians, along with this film that has no flexibility whatsoever. And when you do your job exquisitely, perfectly well, no one knows that you're doing it.
I once saw Philip Glass conduct Koyana Scotzi to the movie.
Wow.
That was in New York. And of course, that doesn't have any dialogue or anything. It's all images. So you could probably, be loosey-goosey with the time.
Well, but not really, actually, because in Koyana Scotzi in particular, there are those hard cuts that go from one thing right to the next.
You're right.
You got to nail those things. And there are things that you can be loosey-goosey with. And I discovered this finally. I knew it was maybe about the 4th film or so I did was the Star Trek, the original. I'm sorry, the original Star Wars, and I found that with John Williams' music, I could be, I could kind of go with the emotional flow of things. But I found that there were like a half dozen things that you had to hit. Like I had to hit that big cadence of Fortissimo when that Death Star blew up. If you hit it early, the gig's up. If you hit it too late, it won't do. So you kind of know, you pick your battles, knowing which things you got to hit, dead on.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
John, what do you think the state of film scoring is these days? It seems like the era of a single film composer composing and conducting an entire score for a film is kind of long past. I mean, it occurs still, but rarely, I think. These days, movies are put together piecemeal out of existing popular music and such.
Yeah.
And there's more of a music coordinator on movies. Do you have any thoughts about this?
You used to go, you'd go to the Grammys, right? And songwriter of the year, and there'd be one person. And then, nowadays for the Grammys, songwriter of the year, they got 17 people involved with this stuff. Everyone's, it's kind of like, processed food. There are all these little ingredients that they put together to kind of create this one thing that is, so absolutely perfect. I think we've kind of lost some of that nuance and individuality, sacrificing that maybe for having something that is just so perfect and easy for everyone to digest. It is interesting though. You think about before John Williams though, right? You think about the movies there in the early 70s and everyone was saying, oh, the orchestra's dead, right? Because there are all of these films with synthesizers or rock bands or whatever, and the orchestra score it was everyone had said it was fading away until Star Wars, and then all of a sudden there was this new a silver age of these great orchestral scores. And I think there are some film franchises that still continue that on. I think your Star Trek franchise will always use that full orchestra. James Bond will always use that full orchestra. All the rest of the Star Wars and a lot of great science fiction franchises will keep that. I don't think it's ever going to go away, but I think there's a little bit of a pendulum as well. I think people are going to start to realize that there's something really fundamentally missing from those grand sweeping film experiences if you don't have a really great score as one of the characters.
I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, now, Maestro, Dan and I come from a software background, and I'm always interested in an industry that I'm not super familiar with, like composing music. When it comes for you to arrange a concert that you're going to do,
right?
How much has computers shaped how you compose versus how you probably did it back in the day, like when you started out? And does it change when you get the symphony together with the music? I mean, can you do more stuff electronically before you get the band back together, if you will?
Okay, so essentially, we are creating music for this Bond concert, the music that you will hear and that we play, and the music that's on the stands of the musicians. It's as old as music making, was. It's the same way things were done 200 years ago.
Okay.
Right. There's still people writing down music, and they've read it, and each person has their own individual piece of music on their music stand. I've got a big score that's got all the different parts on it, and I wave the baton. Everyone kind of knows when to come in, how fast or how slow to go, how loud. I'll cut things off at the very end. And, that's our concert. So in details, though, instead of things being handwritten, now, of course, we have, fantastic ways, especially with computer technology, to create these beautiful, what look like engraved parts. And you can do them at the, like that. We're going to be, for instance, we may be purchasing some music for this concert. And it used to be that you get this big box and it had all the parts in it. But nowadays, you just purchase the link and the orchestra library will print off all the scores for all the individual musicians, and they'll make a score for me as well. So so that way is slightly different, but creating the concert, figuring out what pieces we're going to perform.
Mhm.
I mean, it used to be, and I program all sorts of concerts, but it used to be, of course, that if you didn't know all the music of well, let's just say James Bond or whatever, you'd have to go out and get several recordings, because you'd want to find out all the music that's out there and being able to listen to it and all the rest. But of course, nowadays, for any concert I'm doing, man, I can go on to any streaming service, find any number of pieces, just like that. And it's kind of good because it opens a lot more doors to creativity, to things that I wouldn't be aware of before. I can find like an obscure piece for any given program I'm doing, and within just a few clicks, I can find out what orchestras have performed it, where they rented the parts from, where I can get those parts, can order the parts, and I can get it within a day. And so it does make creating concerts a lot more efficient, a lot quicker. You can turn things around in a much faster way.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, what's going to, when you're looking at now this coming up June 4th, Shaken Not Stirred in Chicago, what's going to be your stamp on that? How are you going to look at this? How are you going to interpret and present the music? How do you look at this from a fresh point of view now and bring it to Chicago?
Well, what I like to do is again, we can't play all the music, right? So I try to get all the greatest hits, things that have got really fun stories associated with them, and some fun facts as well. And so I really like the narrative of being able to tell a very nuanced story that kind of really dives deep into the music and in the realms of the composers, the stars, the producers. I mean, the whole story of Albert Broccoli, and then his daughter Barbara Broccoli takes over, and all of the all of the backstage stuff that people don't really know much about, or that doesn't get printed. We'll be telling the complete George Lazenby story.
Oh, nice. We like George.
So, and of course, what really makes it special is that you've got the Chicago Symphony Orchestra playing this stuff, right?
Fantastic.
This wasn't recorded in the Pinewood Studios, baby. This is an orchestra hall. Yes. And when you hear that music being played live with the world-renowned Chicago Symphony Orchestra, it just takes the whole experience to a whole nother level. And really, I can't encourage people enough. Get those tickets now, because this one will likely sell out. It's very, very popular. And get a great seat, buckle up your safety belt, have a martini or two beforehand, and come join us for an incredible thrill ride of music.
Yeah, I know the three of us have tickets, so I think
we will be there. And we'll be at the reception.
We'll be there.
Well.
We'll be there. Just wanted to throw it out there. Have you ever done or considered doing, say, an evening of Ennio Morricone or Bernard Herrmann?
Yeah.
Or,
Well, I actually I do a lot of those types of concerts, and I usually like to mix a lot of different composer styles. Some of the music is very difficult to get. The Morricone music is, it's in bits and pieces all over the world, and so it's kind of tricky to get a lot of it in one single place. So often, when you're in a film scoring session, wherever in Milan or Los Angeles or Vancouver, all the music gets put onto player stands, and everyone records it. It's fine. It's in the can, and then all the music goes away, or it gets put into a box and shoved off into a corner somewhere. So sometimes it can be very, very difficult to find that stuff. Fortunately, Bernard Herrmann, a lot of his greatest music is still very well preserved. And it is a whole lot of fun and a lot of work to put on one of those productions, because this music is serious stuff. I mean, it's not light in any regard, and it really requires exceptional musicianship to really do them well.
Yeah. Tom and I just recorded a podcast episode on Five Fingers, and the music, of course, was done by Bernard Herrmann on that one as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
And the Man Who Knew Too Much as well, 1956 version. So great stuff, great music, fabulous. It would be terrific if you did one on Herrmann.
Yeah, well, just to have all of your podcast listeners and viewers here, just write a letter to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Say we want JMR back to do some Bernard Herrmann.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I say.
Start writing now, folks.
All right, I've got one more question, and it's about the experience of going to this concert that you're doing. And you are such a high energy guy. What do you do to help us audience members get some of that energy?
Oh, you know what? It's all. I like to consider myself a mirror, right? I'm getting all of this energy from the musicians and from the composers and the spirit of those great arrangements, and it just reflects right from the orchestra to me, and I turn around and reflect it right back to the audience members. I always think of myself as kind of bringing everyone together and putting us all into the same room, as it was. And to be able to have this opportunity to share this great joy of music with everyone. And for those people, people come to James Bond, in 3-4 different generations, right?
Right.
There are all these people who saw those films from 1962, 3, 4, right? And then you also have these fans who have just come to the James Bond franchise. And for most of those people who've just come to the franchise, they don't know any of the tunes from any of the old tunes. And likewise, there are a lot of the old timers who've seen these shows who haven't seen any of the Daniel Craig films. And I kind of find it's like a reunion. Everyone's coming together and we're getting to know new music and new styles. It's a real joy to behold everyone coming together and enjoying this all in the same place.
Well, the true Bond fans know it all.
Yeah, there you go.
They do. Yeah.
Well, and I love the fact that, again, with your energy, you're going to bring this out of us. You're going to take that energy for us. You're going to deliver it to us. It's not from somebody who really doesn't do a lot of going to symphonies. It's not a guy just waving a baton. You bring the orchestra and the audience together and try to keep us together.
There you go. Well, you know what? It's not try. It's easy, really, because when you're performing this great music with a great orchestra, I mean, magic happens immediately. Bam. And so, we've got a tiger by the tail, an incredible singer, these incredible stories and remarkable scores. You put it all in the same room together and magic happens. One of the great things about the Cincinnati Pop is our recording legacy. I mean, we are the most recorded Pops orchestra on the planet. And of course, most of that was done by Eric Kunzel, my predecessor, who actually made a CD of Bond scores back in the day. But I've continued in that legacy, and we've done a lot of film music, including one that includes a lot of the great Marvel universe of film scores, and it's called Superheroes, a fantastic CD that you should get. Also, Voyage, which was a lot of science fiction, science fact with music all coming together. And we also got a Grammy nomination for our American Originals 1918 that tells the story of the early age of jazz right after the First World War. And so this American music that is done in films, that is done with the imagination, that is done in jazz and early rock and roll and bluegrass. I mean, it's the essence of the American musical experience. And that's what I'm really passionate about.
All right. For those interested in attending the event in Chicago, and you should be, head to cso.org for all the ticket information and the reception information. We'll all be there. You can also check out John Morris Russell at the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra page at cincinnatysymphony.org/pops. Do it. John Morris Russell, thanks for joining us today. We are looking forward to seeing you June 4th in Chicago.
Absolutely. Buckle your safety belt, man. It's a killer show.
We're
Absolutely.
going to.
Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Can't wait.
All right. This has been
Super.
Dan
And Tom,
and our guest Raymond Benson here at SpyMovieNavigator.com and our show Cracking the Code of Spy Movies. Subscribe to our show now through your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening to us. We appreciate you spending time with us. Thanks.